Now we can cause some damage!
The 90s have to be my favorite era of my life so far. It was just such an unfiltered period of time where things like political correctness, woke, and cancel culture didn't exist. Whether it was anime, movies, cartoons, or TV shows, creators could just unleash their creativity, while the audience was not shamed for enjoying something they liked. Duke Nukem is a product of such an era. And if you didn't know any better, it's easy to say that this game promotes things like chauvinism and hypermasculinity, which I obviously disagree with strongly. If anything, Duke Nukem emerged as a satire of these very things that were pervasive across all popular media at the time, in my opinion. No doubt it capitalized on that market, but I think anyone with half a brain cell could tell you not to take this blonde, muscle-bound titular character who spouted one-liners like, "It's time to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum," or "Now you see me, now you're dead," too seriously. I mean, come on, the sheer corniness coming out of his mouth should be a dead giveaway of this fact. All in all, Duke Nukem also happened to be a solid game, which, when mixed with this colorful character, led to it becoming one of the most loved video game franchises of all time. So why is it that despite its popularity, Duke Nukem has never really been successfully adapted into a film so far? I think in 2026 we have clearly overcome the stereotype where video game adaptations are always going to be bad films or TV shows. So why hasn't a Duke Nukem film seen the light of day so far? In this video, I will be answering this exact question and more in deep details, so be sure to watch till the end. So without further ado, cock your guns and strap on some Kevlar, and let's begin. So why was there never a Duke Nukem movie? Despite Hollywood churning out one movie adaptation after another based on pop culture material from back in the day, not every one of these projects has the privilege of being created under the umbrella of something like the MCU, where even if it flops, it barely makes a dent in the company's coffers. I think, therefore, it's fair to say that it's not that people don't want to make a movie based on Duke Nukem, it's just that for numerous reasons, which I'll explore next, it doesn't look likely that it will ever happen. I also believe that this is not that strange of a phenomenon, considering just how many other franchises are out there whose films are either stuck in development hell or have never even been considered as potential movies. In Duke Nukem's case, though, if I'm to believe everything that's floating around on the internet, it certainly isn't for lack of trying. Remember the cult classic Mortal Kombat films that came out in the late 90s? What if I were to tell you that the producer for those films, Lawrence Kasanoff, had actually proposed an adaptation for Duke Nukem? Sadly, it remained just a proposal, and people quickly moved on and forgot about it. Years later, around 2018, John Cena was reported to be in talks to play Duke Nukem, with Paramount Pictures and Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes involved. Honestly, considering just how well Cena has developed into an actor over the years, I can see him playing the role perfectly. He has the physique and the acting chops to pull off an over-the-top corny action hero to a T. What happened to that, you ask? Well, nothing really is the answer, as there has been radio silence from all parties since then, effectively leading me to believe that the project has been canned as well. According to The Hollywood Reporter, a Duke Nukem film now seems to be garnering interest once again, with rumors that the folks behind the hit Cobra Kai TV series are set to take the reins. I mean, if anyone knows how to take a 90s product and make it not only relevant for the current time period, but also turn it into a hit, it's those guys. I think you can see now, though, what I meant when I said it wasn't for lack of trying. One major complication in Duke Nukem's modern history was the long-running rights confusion around Gearbox, 3D Realms, and later corporate ownership changes. Gearbox acquired the Duke Nukem rights in 2010, fought later legal disputes with 3D Realms, and the franchise eventually became part of Take-Two's portfolio when Take-Two bought Gearbox from Embracer in 2024. Things are, however, again, not so simple when it comes to corporate mergers and acquisitions, as I'll explain their impact on the film's creation. However, for now, I can say with some cautious optimism that with the rights issues mostly settled, and the Cobra Kai people in charge, we might just get a Duke Nukem film in the near future. It is a big might, though. Legendary, Cobra Kai, and the new adaptation that hasn't got off the ground so far. Remember I was just saying how things were looking up for the franchise? Especially with the guys behind the Cobra Kai TV series now being in charge of the whole thing? Well, that announcement actually came in 2022, when Legendary Entertainment, the production house who have more recently given us absolute bangers like Dune and the MonsterVerse Godzilla films, bought the rights to the Duke Nukem films from Gearbox. I read in an article by The Hollywood Reporter that they would be joined by Jean-Julien Baronnet, who has previously worked on the Assassin's Creed film, alongside Josh Head, John Hurwitz, and Hayden Schlossberg from Counterbalance Entertainment. As I've stated earlier, the inclusion of the last three guys is what actually gives me hope for the series. Counterbalance Entertainment have made a name for themselves not just through the Cobra Kai series, but also films like Hot Tub Time Machine and Harold and Kumar. These guys are not just producers, but have also written and even directed projects, which makes me believe that maybe it will be one of them sitting behind the camera for the proposed Duke Nukem film. My biggest concern, however, is whether they will be able to find a talented enough writer that can create a script which will be able to adapt the Duke Nukem series to more modern sensibilities while staying true to the core tenets of the franchise. Believe me, this is harder than you think, mainly considering how Duke Nukem video games portray women. Part of the entire Macho Man shtick that the titular character has going for him is not just the over-the-top action, but also the scantily clad women who function as both his opponents and his admirers. While the game is meant to be a satire on the entire action hero and the overly macho culture, it is easy to mistake its content as pure chauvinism and objectification of women, like I've mentioned earlier. This is also probably one of the main reasons why so many people have washed their hands of the project before, because it is a potential nuke, if you know what I mean. Rights ping pong and corporate chaos. How Gearbox, Embracer, and Take-Two keep resetting the board. In the first part of this video, I stated that one of the main reasons that the Duke Nukem film project had failed to take off was the constant fight between companies for the franchise's IP rights. Just stick with me as I give you a brief breakdown of how long this game of corporate musical chairs has been going on, and the parties involved in it. Apogee Software would begin creating the Duke Nukem games in the 90s, and begin creating the Duke Nukem games, slowly building up the franchise. They would soon change their name to 3D Realms while releasing the most popular video game in the series so far, titled Duke Nukem 3D. After years of building the franchise, things would take a dip as the socio-political and the video game landscape changed in the 2000s. This would lead to 3D Realms falling on financial hard times, leading them to effectively abandoning the project and firing all staff members and developers working on Duke Nukem in 2009. Without going into the legal jargon involved, I believe it is around this time that Gearbox would enter the picture and begin developing their own Duke Nukem game that would later turn out to be Duke Nukem Forever, after picking up the pieces from 3D Realms, who had failed to deliver on this game. I'm pretty sure that it would be announced that Gearbox had officially bought the franchise from 3D Realms in 2010. However, despite this, the bickering and legal issues would continue between the two parties until they were both bought and absorbed, as I said earlier, by the Embracer Group, following a massive Saudi investment. Fast forward to 2024, and Embracer Group agreed to sell Gearbox Entertainment to Take-Two Interactive for $460 million, putting Duke Nukem under Take-Two through Gearbox. This is where the vagueness sets in, as you can already see. According to some reports, Gearbox still retains the rights to Duke Nukem, but since the studio has been taken over by Take-Two, it creates a nightmare with regards to licensing and other rights. This ambiguity regarding deals that might need to be renegotiated to satisfy legal issues is one of the main reasons I think why, despite Legendary Films having bought the film rights, they don't want to fully commit to it immediately. My belief is that everyone is waiting for the dust to settle before actually proceeding with the project. As to when this will happen, my guess is just as good as yours. Tone problem. Is Duke too 90s for a modern movie? As I mentioned earlier, the latest rage in Hollywood seems to be creating adaptations of 90s pop culture material, knowing full well that the kids from back then are now the paying audiences that fill the theaters. In my opinion, Marvel proved this theory, and ever since, studios have been trying their best to discover and carve out their own niche in an attempt to replicate the MCU's domination of the comic book film space. The thing with the 90s, in my opinion, is that the entertainment we got back then was never monolithic or followed a set format or formula, which is why I believe something like Cobra Kai is easier to translate for a modern audience than, let's say, Duke Nukem is. Let me remind you that Duke Nukem came out in an era that had just seen the likes of The Predator and Rambo First Blood blow up into massive hits just a few years prior. Muscle-bound, macho, over-the-top action heroes were all the rage, as actors like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone dominated the box office. I don't think, therefore, it is of any surprise that a video game company wanted to capitalize on that trend as well, the result of which was the character of Duke Nukem. However, the way Apogee Software framed the character was more like a parody of the entire action hero genre, as I have stated time and again. Yes, it had the over-the-top action, the muscular hero who had unlimited ammo and the license to kill, but Duke Nukem was never a character that people took too seriously right from the start. The stories for the games were almost non-existent, as they mostly focused on Duke Nukem saving the world from alien threats and leather bikini-bound ladies, with all the other scantily clad women fawning over his manliness. It was meant to be raw, spoofy, and attention-grabbing. The fact that these were also pretty decent games obviously helped to grow the franchise's popularity, especially among its young audience. However, I don't think I need to say that the world was a different place back then. Political correctness was already being debated back then, but the entertainment landscape still felt far less controlled than it does now. I think it's fairly obvious to see just why this series, therefore, would be so difficult to reinvent for the modern audience. It would be lambasted by certain groups the moment it came out, and I think no one, especially the money men, want to invest in such a volatile product. There is also the fact that if the people behind the film decide to tone down certain elements of the film to the point that the franchise is unrecognizable to its actual fans, the film would draw backlash as well. I think, knowing how Hollywood functions, Duke Nukem would be the ultimate opportunity for them to do some virtue signaling, and I can see this totally happening. In the end, the point I'm trying to make is, with regards to adapting Duke Nukem to a modern audience, it's mostly a lose-lose situation for the people taking on the task. If you ask me for my personal opinion, I don't think it's impossible to do at all, but it will obviously be very challenging. A Curse of Development Hell, from Duke Nukem Forever to the never-made movies. I think the Duke Nukem franchise is just cursed to be in development hell, and I'm not just talking about the films that never came out. Remember the Gearbox game, Duke Nukem Forever, that came out in 2011 that I spoke about earlier? Well, that game was infamously stuck in developmental hell for years as well. The folks at 3D Realms cited the reason for it being the scope of the game, which they termed as the most ambitious to date. The truth, as we would later find out, was that the studio was struggling financially, which led them to constantly push the release date for Duke Nukem Forever. Of course, there was some truth in the fact that the game's scope did add to the financial pressure the company was feeling. By the time the game was released, it had already become the butt of jokes among fans and other gamers. I mean, who is to blame them? After being teased endlessly with screenshots and trailers hyping up the game to be the next big thing, not just for the franchise, but in the industry as well. To be kept waiting forever was probably not a great feeling. Now follow this horror story up with the franchise's attempt at creating a movie franchise as well. I think you can see the correlation here. I'm not really superstitious, and we have already discussed that this failure to deliver films for the franchise is due to much deeper issues, but it does feel like the Duke Nukem franchise is under a hex at times. As of now, communication has all but ceased with regards to the film under Legendary, and with more than 4 years having gone by, my hope is evaporating pretty fast. I truly believe that if done right, Duke Nukem will be a game changer with regards to how films that are video game adaptations are viewed. There is so much potential here to turn into something more legit than its legacy provides, while retaining the humor and some of the edginess from the video games. If not that, then I wish they would go on an all-out R-rated film route, just like Deadpool, and not worry about the backlashes and such, giving the fans of the franchise what is essentially a love letter and thank you for waiting so long and patiently for the film. Would you be interested in a Duke Nukem film? If it were ever to come out, let me know in the comments below. For now though, it's time for me to say goodbye. I hope to see you soon on the next one. Until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.